All right, supply side policies. This is the final section of aggregate supply. We talked about how an increase in factors of production, either the quantity or quality, is the only way to create a shift. So the government can actually set some policies and do some activity that can lead to more quality or quantity of factors of production. So there are two different ways of doing it. Interventionalist supply side policies, as suggested, it's where the government play a much bigger role in encouraging growth. You can think of this in terms of U.S. politics, like think of the face of Obama for these strategies, because he was really good about bringing in things like healthcare and adding a lot more support from the government. So one thing the government can do in terms of interventionist policy is more investment in human capital. What that means is that the government can try and create more opportunities, things like training and education, to help improve the workforce, the labor force, and get that factor of production more efficient and more effective. So they can do a lot of retraining of existing workers or set up, a lot of schools, public education, private universities. And ways of supporting this could either be by launching it themselves or by giving subsidies or tax benefits to these types of institutions. So the whole point is to increase and raise the level of human capital in an economy. For research and development, once again, R&D is really important because the more research out there, the more technology improves, the better we can start supplying things more efficiently. So once again, governments can play a lot with taxes on this. If firms aren't required to pay taxes on retained profit they use for R&D, that's a big incentive. So they're more likely to do more research. They call this a tax credit. So that's a good tool the government can use to help push and encourage research and development in the country. Governments therefore encourage it, and then but they can also finance R&D themselves. Once again, this can be in the form of grants to universities or to research facilities. So either way, that's an interventionalist method for the government to light a fire for research and development. Provision of maintenance and infrastructure, roads, electricity, water supply, waste management, railways, all of this stuff is critical for businesses to run. So by the government providing a lot of that, improving the infrastructure of a country, they can then boost economic activity. So you'll see more enhanced quality of all the different factors of production, resources getting places quicker, labor forces being able to move about easier. So there'll be an improvement in the overall supply in the economy. A final point is direct support for businesses and industries. A lot of times the government can set up laws where they can help, more competition, help out small and medium enterprises become more established by either giving them support financially or advice. There's a lot of advising companies. So here in the UAE, actually, we have a really good SME initiative by the government where they'll actually help SMEs set up business plans and promote their ideas and things like that. So there's a lot of things that the governments can do on the interventionist strategy to help improve the supply. Because remember, we want growth, right? And one way of providing growth is by having more supplies out there to buy so that the GDP goes up. So don't forget that in addition to these tax credits, there's also a lot of subsidies that could be provided. Um, they're not really interventionist policies. They're not really considered to be controversial. What they really do is they have characteristics of merit goods. So they're trying to improve the supply of things that would otherwise be underprovided. So a lot of the welfare gains, it's quite important actually for some of these. Um, Remember, guys, that in the long run, there could be demand side effects felt when you make changes in the supply side. The demand quickly can change, but sometimes there's a lag between supply. So when you're encouraging education, for example, it might take a student 4 or 5 years to complete a bachelor's degree, and only then can they start working and become productive members of society. So that is one thing to keep in mind about supply side policies. And sometimes it takes, so one president, for example, might make a lot of rules to improve supply side policy, but it might not actually hit until the next president arrives, and then he gets all the credit. And this is a very common thing because it is kind of more of a long-term thing. There is a lot of controversies that can arise from it, though. For example, funding of education, how much resources goes. Because remember, whenever you fund something, there's an opportunity cost, right? That's money that could be going somewhere else. So how do you pick and choose which interest group, which sector of the economy the government will provide? Is science more important than the arts? What if the government starts funding more science-based classes versus arts-based classes? So controversy can arise out of interventionist policies, but as they can also with the market-based. So market-based, kind of think of a Donald Trump face to this, all right? So the interventionalist was a little bit more Obama style. Think of Donald Trump, because market-based policies are looking at ways of incentivizing increased production in the economy by removing regulation. So a lot of the laws and rules that they make are to take away pressure from the government. One thing that they can do is reduce household income taxes. People are taxed according to how much income they earn. By that logic, the harder you work, the more taxes you have to pay. By reducing household income tax, it'll give an incentive for people to go out and work harder because they're not going to have to pay higher taxes anymore. Another thing that the government can do is reduce corporate taxes. Corporate taxes, once again, it reduces their overall profit take home by allowing them to make more profit by getting a higher percentage because less taxes from your retained profits are going to the government. It's once again promoting more business activity, giving companies a bigger incentive to work harder, therefore increasing supply in the economy. Labor reforms. So once again, these sound a bit harsh, but reducing the power of the trade unions. Trade unions increase costs of business. They're trying to get higher salaries, safer working conditions for their staff. You eliminate all of that stuff or reduce it. Now it's cheaper for businesses to operate, and there's more likely going to be an increase in business activity and an increase in supply. Getting rid of minimum wages, once again, that's going back to lowering the costs, where let the businesses pay the people whatever they want to pay them, and the people can make up their decision whether or not that's worth the job. Getting rid of unemployment benefits. Market-oriented supply-side economists recommend that unemployment benefits might encourage more people to stay unemployed. So if you remove them or lower them, it will force people to get off their butts and get jobs. Once again, this is very controversial because a lot of people are unemployed for extenuating circumstances that might need that support. So there's always going to be two sides of the story for this. Some other points that can come up: deregulation. That's where pretty much the government can get rid of a lot of the regulations in terms of environmental law, health and safety laws. By having less regulations, once again, it can increase aggregate supply because it's easier and faster for businesses to conduct their activity. Privatization is another method where you're releasing responsibility from the government and then letting private companies pick it up. So if, for example, delivering mail used to be the government's job, outsourcing it and allowing couriers to come in, they're going to be more efficient. They're trying to make profits, so they're going to lower their costs, and increase more output as a result because they're private and that's their job to grow and make money. Policies to increase competition is yet another method of relaxing government power. So things like anti-monopoly laws, once again, increasing efficiency, productive potential in the economy, things like that. International trade policies, making more free trade between countries, that's another example of improving efficiency. So all of the market-based policies can reduce the whole point of them is to reduce the role of the government in the economy. So it can generate positive outcomes. There's obviously going to be economic growth, the lower costs. So employment could improve as we have more business activity taking place, but there's a lot of negative outcomes that can come. You could have the low income families, especially, they're going to have worse living standards without the protection of the trade unions. The environment can get worse with relaxed laws on environmental conditions. Health and safety regulations being relaxed could mean way worse working conditions, longer working hours in the workplace. So there's pros and cons of both methods at the end of the day, and it ends up being a constant kind of swinging back and forth in the economy by a government to try and somehow keep the supply increasing and avoid any kind of retraction in the economy. Subscribe, like, comment below. What's your favorite methods and why? Bye.